Doctors left her to die. No hope remained. Until one human became her only hope. The storm outside pressed against the glass walls of Draven Prime's colony hospital, the rain pelting in hard sheets, drowning out the distant hum of shuttles over the docks. Inside, everything gleamed. White walls, humming machines, and floors polished so clean they reflected the ceiling lights like water. Vance Core adjusted the collar of his dock inspector's jacket as he walked down the corridor. He looked like another civil worker with a scanner tablet in hand, but the way his eyes swept corners and the measured pace of his boots gave him away to anyone trained to notice. He wasn't here on assignment. His official duty was to confirm cargo inventories for the trade registry, a job that kept him off the front lines since his years as a field medic ended. Tonight was different. He had pulled shipment manifests from the hospital supply wing and had noticed anomalies, sedatives ordered in bulk for the non-viable ward. It had made him curious, and curiosity, combined with the instincts of a man who had seen soldiers left behind, was enough to bring him here. The hallway marked "No Viable" looked abandoned, too quiet. One door was sealed by a basic maglock. His hand hovered for a moment. He weighed the risk. Fines, registry sanctions, maybe worse. But his jaw tightened. He had carried men and women off battlefields, refusing to let statistics decide their fate. He wasn't about to stop now. He keyed in a maintenance override, his pulse steady despite the thought that this might end his civilian career. The lock clicked open. The room was bright, almost painfully so. In the middle, a single bed stood with a woman on it. She wasn't hooked to full support, only a mask feeding low oxygen, a saline drip, and a sedation line. Machines tracked her vitals with dispassionate rhythm. A paper tag on the rail read, Naraya, lung ROT, NO irreversible. She didn't look like the numbers on the screen. Green skin with a faint iridescence glistened with sweat, her black hair clinging damply to her temples. The ceremonial wrap around her body was thin, more suited for rituals than sickness, now plastered against her skin, frayed and translucent under the lights. Her chest rose unevenly, struggling against airways clogged with crystalline dust. Vance studied the chart quickly. The doctors hadn't tried a graft. No stim regimen. No filtration. Just sedation until her body failed. He felt anger not in his gut, control but sharp. To the system, she was already dead. To him, she wasn't. Her eyelids twitched, then lifted with effort. Amber eyes focused on him for only a moment. Her lips parted. The voice that came was thin, almost cracked. "Leave me. Not worth it." He crouched at her side, his voice calm, clipped, the same tone he used on the field when panic made men shake. "You're worth it. Breathe with me." He pinched off the sedation line and replaced it with a plain saline drip. The monitors jumped, protesting. He ignored them, leaned close, and adjusted her mask to manual. In, hold, out. His words matched the pace of his own breath. She tried, failing at first, then falling into rhythm. The door hissed, and a nurse stepped inside, tray in hand. Her eyes widened. Vance's hand instinctively shifted, ready to fight if he had to. But the nurse only froze, then slowly pushed the tray onto the counter. Her voice was flat, tired. "I didn't see you. Nobody checks this wing. Everyone only looks at numbers." Her hand slid something small across the tray, a sealed ampoule. "Bronch relaxant. You'll need it." She didn't wait for his reply. She left, and the door clicked shut again. Vance drew a slow breath, pulse heavy in his ears. He cracked the ampoule and added it to the line. Naraya's chest eased, her shoulders loosening as the drug worked. She coughed hard, a wet, painful sound, and gray flecks smeared the inside of the mask. He supported her, bracing her weight with an arm around her back. She felt fragile against him, bones too sharp beneath overheated skin. The wrap slipped from her shoulder, leaving her exposed. Heat rose in him, an unwanted reaction, but he pushed it aside and pulled the sheet higher. His hands were steady, the habit of a medic who had seen too much to lose composure. Still, the contact lingered in his chest. She watched him, eyes clearer now. "You don't move like an inspector," she rasped. "Old work," he said simply. His mind flicked back to mud, blood, and the stink of burned air filters on the battlefield. He had been trained never to answer more than he had to. Her gaze didn't break. Why me? He tightened the mask seal, buying time. Because you're breathing. That's not enough. It's enough for me. She studied him, then let her head fall back, eyes shutting again. Her breath still rattled, but steadier than before. Vance moved quickly now. He disconnected monitors, looped the mask tube into a portable rig he had improvised from his medic's pouch, and then lifted her from the bed. She weighed less than she should, her heat burning through his jacket as he carried her. His mind stayed cold. Check the corners, avoid cameras, keep his pace steady, not rushed. The corridor was empty. Rain hammered outside as he pushed through the service door into the storm. Naraya whimpered against his chest, voice muffled by the mask. "They'll charge you." "They could send me a bill," he muttered, pushing forward. His boots splashed through puddles as he carried her down the stairwell toward the dockside market. Every sense sharpened, each shadow, each camera blink, every sound of the storm. The risk was real, but the decision was already made. By the time he shouldered open the door to his apartment above the rusted stalls, his shirt clung to his back with rain. He laid her gently on the narrow bed. The room was small, humid, filled with the quiet tick of a space heater. He set his pouch on the crate he used as a table and snapped it open. Inside were the tools of a past life: clamps, tubing, stimulants, and a filtration disc disguised as spare machine part. He looked at her once more, sweat on her temple, chest struggling for air, and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on him. He had taken lives in war. Now he had the chance to save one. Vance's jaw tightened. He hadn't come here tonight to be a rescuer. He had come chasing a suspicion. But as he slid the filtration disc into place and prepped the line, he understood the truth. His mission wasn't cargo or compliance anymore. His mission was her. Rain ticked on the window while the heater pushed a dry, steady warmth across the room. Vance set the ceramic filter in its cradle and locked the clamp with a firm turn of his wrist. He checked the line again, tracing the tubing from mask to pump to waste basin, making sure nothing kinked or leaked. The rig looked simple because he made it simple. Air in, air out, grit trapped, lungs given room to work. He dosed the bronchial relaxant the nurse had slipped him and watched the color return to Naraya's neck in a slow, careful bloom. He listened for the change. Her breath still rasped, but the end of each exhale no longer cut off like a door slamming. Better. He pinched the mask seal, pressed it tighter to her cheek, and set the pump to a steady rhythm. "What is it?" she asked, voice thin under the mask. "A filter disc," he said. "Ceramic face, microcharge. It pulls the crystal dust before it reaches your lungs again. Will it fix me? It buys time. Then I graft a small filter under the collarbone. You keep it for a month. We use growth stems so the lungs rebuild." She took that in. "So you knew what to do the second you saw me." "I knew what they refused to try." He braced her upright with one arm and began percussion along her back. Firm taps, base to apex, then over the ribs, breaking loose what the pump could not catch on its own. The first cough hit hard. She folded around it. Gray grit misted the inside of the mask and ran down the waistline. When she sagged, he held her up and kept counting the breath. In, hold, out. She matched him from muscle memory she didn't know she had. A minute passed, then 10. The filter face shaded to ash. The basin clouded. He swapped in a clean one without slowing the count. The room smelled like boiled water, disinfectant, and human skin after fever. His shirt clung to his back where the rain had soaked through. He didn't feel it. "You have questions," he said, watching her eyes track him. "Many," she said. "Start with yours." He hadn't planned to talk. He planned to work until the numbers told him she could sleep. But she was right. Questions were part of care. He set the pump a little slower and kept his voice even. "Why were you in a ceremonial wrap?" he asked. She parted cracked lips in a tired smile. "Because I came to the city with one bag and a letter for a placement office. They sent me to Textile Row. The vents blow fibers into your hair and close no matter how you cover up. I washed my work tunic in the sink and it never dried. The wrap was all I had left when I collapsed." She shifted the mask and winced. "You're wondering if I have family?" "Yes." They're off-world. Traitors. I told them I had work. I didn't tell them the truth once it changed. She looked at the ceiling. If the hospital sent a death notice, they'd sell their ship to come here, and it wouldn't help me. I thought dying quietly was kinder. That felt stupid the second you spoke. Good, he said. Keep thinking that way. My turn, she said. How did you open that door? Old maintenance code from my medic days. Hospitals don't change what isn't broken. And why were you there at all? Officially? Inspecting a shipment of filters and sedatives. He checked the clamp. Unofficially? The order numbers didn't match patient loads. The viable wing draws heavy sedation every quarter. They don't draw graft kits. That tells a story I refuse to leave alone. You like breaking rules. I like changing bad ones. He paused. Breaking them is the tool. She studied him with clearer eyes. What happens to you if they trace this? Fines. Job suspension. Maybe a ban from the registry. I can live with that. What happens to me if they trace this? They won't, he said, and meant it. He reached for her wrist and felt the pulse. Warm. Faster than he liked. Steady enough. A tremor ran through her forearm. He covered it with his hand and pressed the wrist to the mattress until it passed. She did not look away. You touch like you've done this too many times, she said. I have. Soldiers and civilians who were unlucky near soldiers. Her gaze dropped to the tool roll. He kept too organized for a dock inspector. Do you miss it? No. He restarted percussion along her back. I miss the clarity. She breathed through another coughing run. When it eased, he boiled water and sterilized a set of clamps for the night. He set a small kettle on the crate, and the heater clicked as it fought the damp air. He pulled his long work shirt from the closet and set it at the foot of the bed. You'll want that after the fever breaks, he said. She eyed it. You cover me like a brother, but you look at me like a man. He felt heat rise in his neck and didn't pretend otherwise. Both are true. I control one of them. Good, she said, simple and serious. He reset the mask and switched the pump to a lower draw. Her chest lifted more easily now. He gave a small dose of stim, slow push through the port, and watched for the burn. Her fingers tightened around the sheet, then eased. What is crystalline lung rot? She asked. Not as a victim, but as someone who wanted to understand her enemy. Microfibers lodge in the bronchi. Your body coats them. Over months, the coating hardens. Tiny crystals tear the airway walls. Breathing hurts, so you shallow breathe. That lets more fibers sit. Doctors call it non-reversible because by the time you show up, they want a perfect fix in one step. There isn't one. There's a slow fix in 10 steps if someone stays. You're staying. I am. Because it's your mission. Because it's mine now. He adjusted the waistline. And because the city that calls itself perfect doesn't get the last word. The knock at the door came soft and offbeat. Vance's posture changed without a thought. He turned his body to shade Naraya from the line of sight. Who is it? He called. Rhea from next door, a woman said. You left your mail in the downstairs slot again. He opened the door a hand's width. Rhea stood in the hall holding 2 envelopes and a package wrapped in brown paper. She peered past him and spotted the rig in a glance that took in more than he wanted. She didn't react. Are you finally fixing that heater with the part 1 lent you? She asked loudly, for any ears that might be on the stairs. Yes, he said, catching her play. Good, she said, voice bright enough to carry. She lowered it for him alone. You need broth? I have stock on the stove. I'll take it, he said. She nodded once and left. He shut the door, set the mail aside, and met Naraya's questioning look. Rhea knows when to talk and when to act, he said. She won't ask for details. You have allies, Naraya said. I have neighbors, he corrected. Allies come after you prove yourself. Her eyes softened. You talk like someone who got burned and learned. He didn't answer. He swapped the basin again. The grit load had slowed, which meant the disc was doing its work. He lifted the mask for 20 seconds and watched her lungs move on their own. They held. He set it back. Why did the nurse help? Naraya asked. She said nobody checks that wing. That sounded like guilt. Guilt makes people pass you an ampoule when they can't overturn a policy. Will she be punished? No. She saw a man who looked like he belonged and a patient whose chart said nothing would be done. If anyone asks, she delivered a tray. Naraya watched him spin the clamp and set the pump lower still. You planned for every angle. I try. And if you fail, then I adapt. He glanced at the window where rain had softened to a mist. Or I pay the price. She nodded, accepting an answer that didn't pretend to be heroic. Her breath evened. The tremor in her arm didn't return. He checked her temperature and watched the number drop into a range that didn't make the back of his neck tense. He let himself exhale. Rhea knocked again and handed him a lidded tin. "For the heater," she said in the same loud voice. "It'll run smoother after this." She winked once and left. The broth smelled like bone and herbs. He set the tin on the crate, cooled a spoonful with a breath, and offered it. Naraya sipped, swallowed, and closed her eyes at the taste. Her face shifted into something that wasn't pain. He let her take a few more, then stopped because too much would make her cough. "You said the city doesn't get the last word," she said. "What word do you want?" "Compliance," he said first, because the inspector in him never shut up. "Real filters on the vents. Fewer bodies in that wing." He hesitated. "And a life that isn't made of only reports." "And me?" He met her eyes. "Alive, breathing without a machine, wearing more than a sheet, eating in that chair. While I file paperwork, I will care about less than whether you finished your bowl." She studied him and let something inside her ease. "My mission," she said, voice steadier, "was simple when I came here. Work, send credits home, prove I didn't need anyone. I failed at all three." She lifted a hand to the mask strap but didn't pull it. "I'd like a new one." "What is it now?" "Live," she said, not quietly, not as a number. "Good," he said, and it came out rougher than he expected. He checked the time and the disc color and decided to push one more small dose of stim. He set a local anesthetic on the crate and laid out a short catheter kit, then put it away again. "Tomorrow," he said, more to himself than to her. "The graft is tomorrow at night when the building is quiet. Tonight, we stabilize." She watched his hands move. "You don't shake. I shake when I'm done. Will you tell me when that is? You'll be the first to know." He killed the ceiling light and let the lamp hold a warm circle over the bed. He took off his jacket, hung it, and sat in the chair with his forearms on his knees. She tugged the sheet up and shivered. He handed her the shirt and turned his head while she slipped it on. The fabric swallowed her and fell to her mid-thigh. She caught him looking when he turned back, and she didn't look away. His chest tightened in a way he recognized and controlled. He set the mask seal with careful fingers and forced his mind to the rig. "Thank you," she said, "for the shirt, for not treating me like a task." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We're only at step one." "Then thank me for breathing," she countered, and gave him a look that carried more fight than she had an hour ago. He let himself smile. Small, real. "Thank you for breathing." Her eyes drifted but didn't close. "If I sleep, wake me if it turns," she said. "I will. And if you sleep, who wakes you?" "I won't," he said. That was true. He never slept on step one. He sat with the pump's pulse in his ears, the heater's tick in the background, and the rain's soft hiss on the glass. He watched the rise and fall of her chest and the way her hand relaxed on the sheet. He cataloged every small change, the way field medics do when no one else will do it for them. He let the anger he carried at the hospital cool into purpose. Reports could wait. The graph could not. He adjusted the clamp by a degree, set the timer, and breathed with her again. When her breathing reached a calm, slow cadence, he reached 2 fingers to the inside of her wrist and felt the pulse trip strong. He let himself believe, for the first time tonight, that she would see morning without a mask. He checked the rig once more and leaned back in the chair. The room held steady. The worst of the night had passed, and the plan for tomorrow had weight. He could work with that. He would. He set the empty broth tin on the floor and listened to the city quiet. Draven Prime kept its lights bright through every storm, as if brightness were virtue. He stared at those lights and made a private promise. He would file one report tomorrow, not to the hospital, but to the registry unit that audited air quality on Textile Row. He would attach photos. He would attach names. He would attach a recommendation that could not be ignored without leaving a record. Then he would cut a small window under Naraya's clavicle and place the filter that would carry her through recovery. Step 2. Step 3. Step 10. Her breath held steady. The pump hummed. He rolled his shoulders, flexed his hands, and kept his seat. If she woke, he would be there. If she didn't, he would still be there. That was the mission. Tonight, that was enough. Dawn pushed a pale band across the wet window. The room held a clean, dry warmth. The pump clicked in a slow, even rhythm. Vance checked the ceramic disc. The face had gone a uniform gray. Good capture, steady load. He lowered the flow, watched the gauge settle, then lifted the mask for 20 seconds and tracked Naraya's chest with his eyes. Her ribs moved smooth. No choke at the end. He set the mask back. "How bad will the graft hurt?" she asked, voice clearer than the night before. "Local anesthetic," he said. "A small window under the collarbone. I seed a low-profile filter. Fix it with 2 sutures. You'll feel pressure, not pain. We flush it daily. You keep it for 4 weeks. Scar." "A thin line," he said. He touched the jawline scar that cut from ear to chin. Different fight, but same lesson. Small marks beat big losses. She watched his hand on the scar like she was measuring the kind of man who admitted to damage without hiding it. "What if I cough during the graft?" "I restrain your shoulder. You focus on my count. We don't rush." She let out a slow breath. "Consent," she said, flat, serious. He nodded. "You decide. If you say stop, I stop." She weighed that and gave one small nod back. "I want the graft." Vance set out the day's kit. Sterile gauze boiled in the kettle, fresh clamps. A second disc still wrapped in brown paper, small vials marked with grease pencil. He caught himself building the tray like he was in a field tent again and adjusted the layout to fit the narrow crate. Keep the line of motion tight. Keep the waste container close. No wasted reach. "You didn't sleep," she said, studying the tired edges around his eyes. I rested in the chair. "That doesn't count." "I don't count well," he said, and she smiled once, brief and honest. A soft knock. Ria's voice came low and bright at the door. "Inspector, that heater part you ordered is here." Vance opened to a hand's width. Ria held a cloth bag and a small battery lamp. She kept her gaze on him, not past him. "The stairs sensors out," she said loudly for any ears, then dropped her voice. "I sanitized the lamp and a roll of packs. Keep them wrapped until use." She handed over the bag and an empty jar. "Return the jar. Full of soup if you're smart." "Thank you," he said. "I didn't see anything," she said, already turning away. Back at the bed, Vance set the lamp behind his shoulder line and tested the beam across Naraya's clavicle. Clean light. No glare. He checked her temperature. Down. Pulse high but steady. He adjusted the pump again and offered water in a measured spoon. She swallowed without coughing. "You asked me last night about family," she said. "There's another answer. My mother named me for patience. I thought it meant tolerating bad luck without complaint. I was wrong. It means staying in the fight without panic. I'm learning." "Good," he said. The word landed heavier than approval. It sounded like relief. She watched him lay out a small syringe. "What questions did you plan to dodge today?" He didn't pretend he hadn't. "Two," he said. "How a dock inspector still has battlefield gear. Why I care past the first night. Both seem important. Gear first. I filed for a civil variance to audit cargo that enters medical supply chains. I told the registry I needed to verify engine parts and filter housings. I bought extras when I could. I keep what others throw out. Nothing illegal, but plenty they would call unnecessary." And the second, "I hated leaving triage," he said. He spoke without drama, plain. "Not because of rank or routine. Because at shift in, they took my hands off patients I knew by name and moved me to an office where results were numbers. The registry felt cleaner than command. Cleaner doesn't mean better. Last night, I recognized the same mistake in a different building. So, I'm your correction. You're my line in the sand," he said. The answer satisfied her more than any softer phrase would have. "All right," she said. "Then I have one more. What happens after me?" "2 tracks," he said. "I file an air quality violation with photos and dates. I log the hospitals that pull sedation without graft kits. Not a speech. A paper trail that forces action. And I teach you how to clear your lungs and care for the graft so you don't come back here. Teach me now," she said. "If you pass out, I should know what to do." He kept his face neutral at the hit of concern in her voice and shifted into instruction. He set the mask aside for a measured interval and had her practice deep breathing by his count. He showed her how to brace her ribs with a towel during a cough to reduce tearing. He guided her palm to feel the angle under her clavicle where the graft would sit. He explained the signs of spasm, the steps to clear the line, the moment to raise him, the moment to call Rhea if he failed to wake, which he said would not happen and she accepted only as a contingency. Food, he asked. Broth, she said. He warmed Rhea's jar on the stove and tasted for salt. He blew on each spoonful before he gave it to her. She ate, slow, eyes on his face like she was filing away each habit for later use. When the jar was empty, color had crept in her cheeks, not fever, but blood doing its job again. Hospital bills, she said. You didn't answer in full. I flagged the account as a Ms. Assigned Inspection Unit, he said. They'll bill a code that cycles back to a general ledger. I'll pay the clinic release fee under a parts invoice. They won't chase unless someone wants a headline. No one wants a headline that admits the non-viable wing exists. You planned that already. Yes. You planned me, she said, a dry humor in it that didn't cut. I planned for a person, he said. You became the person. She reached to the bedside rail and slid off the hospital band. Keep, she said, handing it to him. I don't want a number. He took it without comment, cut the chip with a snip of a clamp, and dropped the pieces into his pocket. It made the smallest metallic sound. The room felt cleaner for it. Shower? She asked, glancing at the corner stall. You can sit on the chair, he said. No steam in your face yet. He heated water, added a cap of antiseptic, and carried the basin to the stall. He set a straight-back chair inside and draped a towel over it. He helped her to her feet, steadying her under the elbow. The hem of his shirt brushed warm skin along her thigh. He noticed. She noticed that he noticed. Neither of them pretended otherwise. In the stall, he kept the water warm and poured in measured passes across her shoulders and back, careful of the mask port and foresight. Fever sweat ran clear. Her breath stayed even. He wrung out the cloth and worked along her arms, then paused. You can finish, he said. Stay, she said. Turn your head when I tell you. He obeyed without argument, set the cloth in her hand, and took a step back. When she asked him to turn, he did, and handed the cloth again when she held it out. He kept his voice neutral and his posture steady. It cost him effort. He paid it. When she stood, he wrapped a clean towel around her shoulders and guided her back to the bed. The shirt went on over warm skin. The scent of antiseptic and soap changed the room. Better, she said, settling. I feel like a person. You are one, he said. Her eyes flicked to his hands as he adjusted the mask strap. She touched the back of his knuckles. Not a test, not a tease, a quiet acknowledgement of what both of them controlled. He didn't move for a beat, then returned to the line check. His tablet buzzed. A registry notice slid across the screen. Hospital supply audit. Follow-up scheduled. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. He felt his body shift into assessment. Time. He needed the graft done before then. He needed his report prepared. He needed to keep her stable for transport to the roof for air drills and back without crossing any cameras that still worked. Problem? She asked, reading the change in him. Timeline, he said. He showed her the screen. We do the graft tonight. We keep the bandages clean. Tomorrow morning, I file the error complaint with photos. If the audit takes me out for 2 hours, Rhea checks on you with a list. You trust her. I trust what she didn't say last night. Then leave me a note she can read, Naraya said. If I'm asleep, she won't wake me unless the note says so. Smart, he said, and he meant more than the plan. He spent the next hour walking her through a rehearsal. He marked the graft site with a skin pin and had her breathe by his count while he placed his fingers where they would be during the cut. He showed her how the suture would lie and where the dressing would sit. He practiced the hand squeeze he would use to cue her to hold still. He listened for any catch in her breath and found none that worried him. He adjusted the pump down one more notch. Her oxygen held. You haven't asked what I did before Textile Row, she said. I waited for you to want to tell me, he said. I taught sector language to off-worlders, she said. Polite words. Customs. How to not insult someone with a greeting. When work dried up, the placement office said strong hands always have value. They said breath masks will be provided. They were thin ones with filters that clog in a week. You'll teach again, he said, not as comfort, but as a schedule. I will, she said, accepting the tone and the promise inside it. He wrote the note for Rhea in tight, legible lines. Medication schedule, warning signs, his number, and a single sentence that would mean more than the rest. If I'm not back by 9 o'clock, call Unit Auditor L3 with the air complaint number attached. He placed the note under a magnet on the metal door. You're pulling them into the light, Naraya said, watching. I'm putting my name on the hook, he said. They see me. They don't see you. She reached for his wrist, turned his hand palm up, and set her fingers over the calluses that ran across his palm. You keep saying you don't make speeches, she said. You do. You just use actions. He didn't argue. The rain stopped near noon. The city noise returned. Cranes, vendors, a distant siren that rose and fell once and cut. Vance timed her breathing drills to the outside sounds so she could practice under distraction. She passed each one. He watched the fatigue creep in and stopped the session before her body forced the end. Sleep, he said. Wake me if the pulse jumps, she said. I will. He took a short shower, changed his shirt, cleaned the tools again, and laid the graph kit out one last time. He scribbled a checklist on the crate lid and ran a finger down it. No gaps. Before she closed her eyes, she looked at him with a quiet, steady focus. Don't soften what you are to make me feel safer, she said. I want the man who walked into a locked room and carried me out. That's who you have, he said. She nodded and let sleep take her. He sat, counted the pump ticks, and let the plan for night fall into place step by step. Anesthesia at 21, incision at 22, seat the housing, flush, suture, dress, monitor, breathe. He pictured each motion until his body could do it without asking his mind for permission. The afternoon moved. The gray bled to a late light. Rhea slid a second jar through the door with a knock and no words. Vance ate standing up, watching the numbers. He filed 3 photos of textile row vents into a draft complaint and tagged times and locations. He attached a short statement that fit on one screen. No rhetoric, only facts. He saved, closed the tablet, and looked at the bed. Naraya slept on her side with one hand open on the sheet. The work shirt had slipped off one shoulder. He stepped in, lifted the fabric, and covered her. He stood there longer than he needed, listening to the quiet. He felt something ease in his chest, a pressure he had carried since the ward door clicked open. He checked the clock. 2 hours tonight. Enough time to sharpen focus and cut fear to size. When she woke, he would brief her once. He would not say, it will be fine. He would say what he meant, I am ready. And then he would prove it. Night settled without wind. The city noise thinned to distant cranes and an occasional siren that rose and fell once. Vance checked the clock, washed his hands with hard soap until the skin felt tight, and laid the kit out in a line he could work blind. Gauze, local anesthetic, fine scalpel, suture, flush syringe, filter housing wrapped in brown paper. He boiled water again, dropped the metal tools in, and watched for a rolling boil before fishing them out with tongs he had cleaned twice already. The battery lamp Rhea brought sat behind his right shoulder, beam raking across Naraya's clavicle without glare. Before we start, he said, voice level, you tell me yes or no. If you say stop, I stop. I need your consent with a clear mind. Her eyes were steady. Yes, she said. I want the graft. He held her gaze another second to fix the moment as a decision, not a drift. He positioned her on her back with a rolled towel between her shoulder blades so the collarbone rose like a clean line to work under. He swabbed the skin with antiseptic in widening circles, then marked the site with a thin line of skin pen. He set a pulse clip on her finger and clipped the portable monitor to the bed rail. Numbers settled where he wanted them. This is the local, he said, lifting the small syringe. Sharp sting, then pressure. I'm ready. He slid the needle under the skin, slow, aspirated, and pushed the anesthetic in a measured line along the mark. The skin blanched. She didn't flinch. He waited the full minute. He tapped the area with the back of a clamp. Feel that. Pressure, she said. No pain. No. He made the incision no longer than the filter seat required. A clean, shallow cut that parted without tearing. He controlled his breath and the pace of his hands because the way he moved would dictate the way she breathed. He slid the tip of a blunt dissector under the skin and formed a pocket the size of the housing, careful to stay superficial. The battery lamp hummed. The power flickered once and recovered. He noted the risk and did not look away from the field. If the room goes dark, I keep working, he said. The lamp has charge. He set his left hand to steady her shoulder. Squeeze my fingers if you need me to pause. She set her fingers in his palm and held, not tight, but present. He felt the heat of her skin and the trust inside the contact, and he let it tighten his focus without rushing him. He unwrapped the filter housing, a low-profile oval with a microcharged face, flushed it with saline, and slid it into the pocket, seat down, face outward, a soft click as the edge met the pocket he had formed. He anchored it with 2 fine sutures to the fascia so it would not migrate. Her breath hitched. He paused. Pain? No. Strange, she said, like a push from inside. Normal. He flushed the housing until the return ran clear. He checked the alignment, closed the pocket with 3 interrupted stitches, and dressed it with sterile gauze he had boiled and air-dried under the heater. He sealed the edges with adhesive. The whole field took 6 minutes, 10 with checks. He kept the tools in order and the waste contained because chaos breeds error. He stepped back a fraction and took a breath he had been holding. Done, he said. She let out a long exhale and smiled without moving her shoulder. It felt smaller than I feared. Smaller is the point, he said. He set the pump to a lower assist to let the new path do part of the work. The monitor ticked. Her oxygen rose 2 points and held. He felt the tight ring around his chest loosen. He did not show more than a small nod. Tell me what to do if something feels wrong, she said. If the area burns beyond a dull ache, tell me. If you feel a flutter in your throat, I'll flush the line. If your breath catches and stays caught, I'll loosen the dressing and reassess. No showers to the chest. No lifting your left arm above shoulder height for 24 hours. We drill slow, breathing every hour until midnight, then every 2 hours. And if you fall asleep? I won't, he said. A knock sounded, 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. Ria's pattern. Vance opened the door the width of his hand. She passed him a roll of sterile packs and a folded note. Stair sensor still broken, she said for any ears. For him alone, softly, 2 officers in clinic whites asked for dock inspections on level B. I told them you filed early and you're off shift. They left. Thank you, he said. He meant more than the words aloud. She glanced at the lamp, at the kit, at the set of his shoulders. You need coffee, she said, letting normalcy cover concern. I'll send some. He shut the door and read the note. Ria had written the badge number she had seen. He filed them in his head and then in his tablet, attached to the draft complaint, not as drama, but as context for why ward doors get locked and left. How long until I can walk? Naraya asked, eyes tracking him. 10 minutes. Slow. Around the room first. Roof tomorrow if your chest tolerates the drill. Will the hospital come here? They prefer silence. He taped the dressing's corners again. If they force noise, they get a record with names. She watched his hands, then his face. You're careful and you take risks. It should not make sense. It does when you stack them, he said. Small risks in the service of a control plan. She licked dry lips. He offered water and steadied the cup at her mouth. She drank, then tilted her head, eyes on his. Thank you, she said. I know gratitude can sound like a script. It isn't. I know the difference, he said. He helped her sit with a hand behind her shoulders and a palm braced over the sheet at her waist. The shirt slid up her thigh. She felt the shift of fabric and watched his eyes hold hers. Not because he was blind to her body, but because he was choosing where to look. The heat that rose between them was clean and grounded, not a tactic and not an accident. He put her feet on the floor and kept his hand at her back as she stood. She swayed once. He steadied her. The dressing stayed clean. They walked the length of the room twice. She paused at the window and drew in a measured breath. No rattle at the end. She blinked fast, as if the lack of pain surprised her, then set her palm on the glass. What happens if my family contacts the hospital? She asked. They might now if anyone reported a collapse. I sent an alert on your patient tag before I left, he said. He pulled the cut band from his pocket. The chip snipped in 2. If a query hits the system, the registry pings my console. I'll intercept and reroute to a generic status. Discharged. If you want to send a message, we do it on our terms, not theirs. I'll wait until I can speak without this mask, she said. I want my mother to hear strength, not static. He nodded. He fetched the note he had written for Rhea and added a line. Family inbound query. Handle through registry console. He slid it back under the magnet. She moved to the bed and sat with care, one hand over the new dressing. Why do you live alone? She asked, a question that had sat in the room since she first saw the single chair and the single cup. I tried otherwise, he said. I made a mistake with someone who liked the idea of a medic, but not the hours or the decisions. I got quiet. Quiet turned into distance. Distance turned into a lock on the wrong door. He lifted one shoulder. Now I keep the door open for people who need it. Like me, she said, not fishing stating. Yes. Will you ask me to leave when I can breathe? No, he said. I will ask you what you want. If you want to stay, you stay. If you want distance, I won't make it a judgment. She studied him, then nodded as if filing the answer for later. For now, I want tea. He almost smiled. Good. That I can do. He boiled water, rinsed the chipped cup with a hot swirl, and dropped in the last of his herbs. The room filled with a mild, clean scent. He tasted, decided it needed the smallest pinch of salt to cut the bitterness, and brought it to her. She cupped it in both hands, took a sip, and exhaled in a way that let him measure calm. Tell me what happens next, she said. Midnight breathing drill, he said. Flush the housing. Check the seal. Practice the hold on my count. At 2, repeat. At 4, repeat. At 6, you sleep while I file the air complaint and prepare for the audit. At 7, I leave for 2 hours. Rhea checks in with this list. You do not open the door to anyone in clinic whites. You call me if the dressing warms past a dull ache or if the pump throws an error. And after the audit, we go to the roof. No mask if your numbers hold. 10 slow breaths against real air. We build from there. She set the cup down and looked at him without speaking for a full breath. Then she reached for his hand, turned it palm up again, and traced the line where the skin had thickened from tools and weight. You said you didn't miss rank, she said. You miss clarity. I can give you some now. He waited. I want to stay, she said. Not because I'm weak. Because I choose to place my recovery where my life was returned to me. That choice is mine. I want you to hear it now before we step into whatever the morning brings. He didn't try to hide the way that landed. He nodded once, not a stiff acceptance, but a real one, and closed his hand around hers and squeezed, careful of the pulse clip. Heard, he said. Kept. The pump hummed a low assist. The lamp's beam stayed solid. Outside, the rain had stopped for good. He flushed the housing with saline and watched the return run clean, then taped the line and set the timer for the midnight drill. He wrote 2 more lines on the crate lid under his checklist. No heroics. No rush. Keep breathing. He set the pen down and sat in the chair with his forearms on his thighs, his posture easy but ready. She slid lower under the sheet, the work shirt riding to mid-thigh again, the dressing neat over the left side, her eyes half closed, her mouth soft, not with sedation, but with fatigue finally allowed. If you want the lamp off, she said, turn it off. I like your face better than that light. He reached back and clicked the lamp to a lower level. The room warmed by degree. He watched her for signs of pain and found none. He let his shoulders settle and kept the count in his head for the next drill. He felt the space change, not from danger, but from 2 people setting new rules in a small room that would hold them. Sleep, he said. Wake me, she said. I will. He sat through the first quiet hour with his hand on the bed rail and the other near the flush syringe, ready to act in the space between one breath and the next. When midnight came, he woke her with a touch to her wrist, and she opened her eyes at once. No confusion, only focus. And together they took 10 slow breaths that sounded like the start of a different life. The room was silent except for the soft tick of the heater and the low hiss of the pump. Midnight drills had passed. 2 in the morning, then 4, then 6. Each time Vance woke Naraya with a touch to her wrist, and each time she opened her eyes without panic, followed his count, and proved her lungs stronger than the night before. He had not slept, but his mind was steady. Fatigue could come later. At dawn, pale light cut through the rain-streaked window. Vance killed the pump for a full minute and watched. Naraya drew in air, held it, and released without the cough that had haunted every exhale the night he carried her from the ward. He noted the numbers in his head: breath rate, chest expansion, the faint rise of color across her cheekbones. She was winning ground. She sat up carefully, one hand on the dressing. "It feels strange," she said. "It should," he answered. "Your body's learning a new path." The grafts seated clean. No redness, no fluid. That's as good as it gets on day one. She let out a breath, steady but soft. "Then I want to stand on the roof today. No mask. You'll stand," he said, "but we do it my way. Slow. 10 breaths only." Her lips curved, not in defiance, but in agreement. "Yue got me here. I'll take it." He packed the kit in silence, checked the seal on the filter disc, and prepped a report file on his tablet. Naraya watched him, eyes sharp. "That's the air complaint?" "Yes. Photos. Dates. 2 badge numbers Rhea passed me. It's clean and factual. No speeches. And if they trace it to you, they'll try. But it's not my name they'll want to erase. It's the evidence. Once it's in the record, it stays." She nodded slowly, understanding the risk. "So while you're gone, I stay inside. No door, no window, no voice." "Exactly," he said. "If anyone comes, Rhea knows the signal. No one else crosses the threshold." She leaned back against the headboard, watching him with a focus that felt heavier than words. "Then teach me one more thing before you leave." "What?" "How to trust the hours when you aren't here." He paused, not because he didn't have an answer, but because trust was not a thing he explained often. "Trust the plan," he said. "Every clamp, every step, every instruction, it's built so you can hold until I return. Trust Rhea's silence. Trust what you've already proven in your lungs. And trust me to walk back through that door." Her fingers traced the edge of the dressing through the shirt. "Then I'll hold to that." He left at 7 sharp, boots steady on the stairwell, tablet in hand. Naraya listened to his steps fade, then glanced at the note pinned to the door. Every line was precise, written in the same hand that had cut her chest open and closed it with skill. It wasn't just instruction. It was presence, even in his absence. She lay back against the pillow, eyes on the ceiling, her breath slow and full. Vance walked the market with measured pace, rain still dripping from awnings, vendors setting out crates of goods. He blended in, a man on morning duty with a tablet and a pouch. But his mind stayed sharp. Every glance, every camera, every white coat in the crowd. He reached the registry office and filed the report without hesitation, attaching the note, the badge numbers, and the images. He signed it with his name. The clerk glanced at him, then at the data. "This will escalate." "Good," Vance said, steady as stone. By 9, he was back at the stairwell. He unlocked his door and stepped inside. Naraya was awake, sitting upright with the cup of tea he'd left cooling on the crate. She looked at him once, eyes clear. "You came back. As promised." She set the cup down and stood, careful but steady. "Then take me to the roof. I want to feel what breathing really is again." He nodded, and for the first time since pulling her out of the ward, a flicker of relief passed through him like something earned. Together, they walked toward the stairwell. The stairwell smelled of damp stone and rust. Vance walked one step behind Naraya, his hand hovering near her back, but never quite touching unless she faltered. She didn't. Her bare feet pressed against the cold, iron steps, the oversized shirt falling mid-thigh, the dressing clean under the fabric. Each step pulled a small wince from her, but she kept moving, steady, measured. When they reached the roof door, he checked the sensor light above it. Dead, the same as last night. He pushed it open. A wave of cool air swept over them, clean after the week of storms. The city spread wide, white towers rising from the docks, smoke curling from textile vents in the distance. Naraya stepped onto the roof and stopped. Her shoulders lifted with the first unassisted breath she had taken since collapsing in the hospital. The air filled her chest, deeper than anything in days. She held it, released, and blinked hard when no pain followed. Vance watched her, arms folded, his face unreadable except for the way his jaw eased. 10 breaths, he said. She nodded. She took the second, then the third, eyes half closed, savoring each one. On the 5th, her chest hitched with a faint cough, and she tensed. His hand touched the small of her back at once, grounding. "Breathe through it," he said. "Don't fight. Control it." She did, and the cough passed without tearing. She glanced at him, amber eyes wet, not from sickness but from the shock of relief. "I thought I would never feel this again." "You will. Every day more." She stayed at the rail, fingers gripping the cold metal. The wind pulled her black hair across her cheek. For a moment, she looked less like a patient and more like the woman she might have been before the ward. Proud, composed, alive. Vance scanned the skyline out of habit. A skiff passed high, no cameras angled down. No threat, no eyes. He allowed himself to stand closer, his shoulder brushing hers. She didn't move away. "Tell me something," she said quietly. "Why did you really carry me out? I know the report, the evidence, the statistics. That isn't enough to make a man risk what you did." He kept his eyes on the horizon. "Because I knew if I left you, you'd die alone in a room that had already decided you weren't worth the bed you lay on. I've seen too many die like that. It doesn't leave me." She turned her head toward him, studying the calm in his voice. "So it wasn't mercy?" "No," he said. "It was refusal." Her grip on the rail loosened. "Then I refused to," she said, and for the first time she smiled without pain. 10 breaths completed. He counted them out loud, then touched her elbow. "Enough for today." She didn't argue. She let him guide her back to the stairwell, but when her foot slipped on a wet step, she reached instinctively for him. His hand closed over her hip to steady her, and the contact lingered a fraction longer than needed. Her breath caught, not from weakness, but from awareness. He moved her forward, no comment, his discipline intact, but the air between them had shifted. Back inside the apartment, she sat on the bed, legs folded beneath her. "You live in silence," she said, glancing at the bare walls, the single cup, the crate used as a table. "Has anyone ever shared it with you before?" He poured water into the kettle. "Not for long." "Why?" He turned, leaned against the counter, and met her eyes. "Because most people want comfort without cost. They want a medic without the nights, the scars, or the choices. I don't edit who I am to make someone stay." She tilted her head, watching him carefully. "And if someone stayed anyway, then it would be because they chose me with the costs, not without them." The kettle clicked, steam curling. He set 2 cups on the crate. She reached for his hand before he sat, her fingers brushing his knuckles. "I want you with the costs," she said quietly. He froze for half a second, then lowered himself beside her. His hand turned in hers, gripping back with a steadiness that said more than any reply. The heater ticked. The city noise faded to a low hum. They sat in the narrow room, the silence no longer empty, but shared. "Tomorrow we walk farther," he said finally. "Tomorrow," she repeated, her voice firm. The pump hummed softly in standby, the dressing stayed clean, and for the first time since the ward, the weight in the room shifted from survival to something new, something neither of them named yet, but both felt settle between them like a fact. The rain had cleared for good. Morning light fell sharp through the window, highlighting the damp streaks on the glass and the clean gauze at Naraya's collarbone. Vance finished checking the sutures, fingers steady, eyes sharp. No swelling, no infection. He pressed lightly around the graft, watching her reaction. She winced at the pressure, but not in pain. "It holds," he said. "Good," she whispered, her voice steadier now. He sat back, peeling off his gloves. The discipline in his movements hadn't changed since the field, every motion clean, efficient. Yet when his eyes lifted to hers, something softened. Just a fraction, but enough to shift the weight in the room. "You haven't asked me what I thought when I woke in your bed," she said suddenly. He raised a brow. "And what did you think?" "I thought I'd been taken by another man who saw only a body," she answered bluntly, her voice even. "Then I saw you cover me with a sheet, and I knew you weren't that kind." His jaw tightened. "That's not who I am." "I know," she said, watching him carefully. "But it means something that you proved it before I even asked." The silence that followed was not heavy. It was full, alive with what neither of them yet spoke. Later, after her breathing drills, he walked her back to the roof. No mask, only the dressing and the oversized shirt. The city air was damp but clean. She stood straighter now, shoulders back, chin lifted, as if reclaiming space she had once given up. He counted the breaths, but she didn't need him to. She paced them herself, eyes closed, hands open on the rail. "You're not counting," he observed. "I don't need to anymore," she replied, opening her eyes. That answer made something shift inside him, a quiet pride mixed with relief. He had carried many broken bodies in his life. Most didn't stand tall again. This one did. Back inside, they ate broth thickened with grain Rhea had left in another jar. Naraya leaned back against the wall, sipping slow. "Do you ever want more than this?" she asked, gesturing to the small room. The crate, the single chair, the battered kettle. "More," he asked. "More than survival. More than filing reports. More than fixing people so they can leave." He met her eyes. "Yes, but I don't plan for it." "Then maybe I will," she said, her gaze steady. The words landed heavier than she intended. He set down his cup and studied her, the lines of her face, the strength returning to her posture, the way the shirt slipped down one shoulder. She didn't shift to hide it. She let him see her as she was, alive, scarred, choosing. He stood, crossed the small space, and sat on the edge of the bed. His hand rested near her thigh, not touching. "Tell me what you want," he said, his voice low, controlled. "I want to be wanted," she answered plainly. His breath caught, just for a second. Then his hand slid closer, fingers brushing her skin, warm and deliberate. She leaned toward him, her lips finding his with no hesitation this time. The kiss was slow, steady, careful at first, then deeper when she gripped his collar and pulled him closer. He broke away long enough to search her face. "You're sure?" "I chose already," she said, her voice rough. "You carried me from a place that called me nothing. You made me more than that. Now let me choose this." He nodded once, the only answer he gave, and then he kissed her again. This time there was no restraint in it, only a controlled urgency that came from weeks, maybe years, of denying himself anything beyond survival. He slid a hand to her waist, careful of the dressing, guiding her back onto the bed. She didn't flinch. She drew him with her hand in his hair, her breath quickening. His mouth traced her jaw, the hollow of her throat, the bare skin revealed as the shirt slipped aside. Her body arched under his touch, not with weakness, but with need. The night stretched into hours measured not by machines or drills, but by whispers, gasps, the sound of skin against skin. He moved with discipline, with care, never letting go of the control that had kept her alive, but allowing enough to show her she was not fragile, not discarded, but fully desired. When it was over, they lay in the low light of the lamp, her head on his chest, his hand resting over the dressing as if protecting it even in rest. "I don't feel like a patient anymore," she murmured. "You're not," he said. "What am I then?" He looked at the ceiling, the first hint of a smile breaking his steady face. "Mine." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since the hospital, she slept without fear. The city woke under a pale sky. Barges moved across the docks, their horns echoing through the damp morning air. Vance sat at the crate table, tablet open, the draft complaint finalized. He pressed send. The data packet routed through the registry servers, stamped with his name and badge ID. There was no taking it back now. He turned toward the bed. Naraya stirred, the shirt sliding along her shoulder as she shifted against the pillow. Her breathing was smooth, steady. The graft held. He crossed the room and checked the dressing. Clean. No redness. No seep. He pressed gently and asked, "Pain?" She shook her head. "Only soreness." "Good. That means it's doing the work." Her hand caught his wrist before he moved away. "And you? You've carried me through every hour. Do you ever feel the weight of it?" "I feel it," he said. "I just don't let it stop me." She studied his face, the discipline there, the steady calm that never broke. "Then let me carry some now." She drew his hand to her chest, over her heartbeat, and held it there. He didn't answer, but the way he exhaled told her he accepted more than her touch. By midday, Rhea knocked with her usual signal. Vance opened the door. She slipped inside, carrying a folded paper. "Words moving faster than usual," she said. "Registry auditors are asking questions about textile filters. Someone leaked your report already." "Good," Vance said. He scanned the paper. It was a public bulletin, air quality violations under investigation. No names, but the words meant action. You'll have eyes on you, Ria warned. I know. Then keep your head low, she said, glancing at Naraya. Both of you. When she left, Naraya asked, Does this change what happens to us? No, Vance said. It changes what happens to them. The ward won't be ignored now. That evening, he took her back to the roof. The air was clearer, the wind carrying only the sharp scent of sea and oil. She stood at the rail, breathing deep without faltering. 10 breaths turned to 20. She laughed once, sudden and bright, the sound echoing across the empty rooftops. You hear that? She asked, turning to him. That's life. He stepped closer, his arm brushing hers. Yes, that's life. She faced him fully, eyes shining in the dim light. So what happens to us now? You stay, he said simply. Her mouth curved. And you? I stop living like the only thing I'm good for is patching broken pieces. I build with you instead. She reached up, cupped his jaw with a scar cut across it. Then we build. He bent, kissed her slowly, no rush, no hesitation. The wind pulled at their hair. The city hummed below, but neither moved. They had crossed from survival to choice, and choice carried more weight than anything the hospital, the registry, or the city could decide. When they returned inside, Vance set 2 keys on the table. He pushed one toward her. Yours, he said. Her fingers closed over it, trembling once before steadying. Then this is home. The night settled quiet. She curled against him in the narrow bed, her breath warm at his chest, his arm firm around her waist. For the first time since he'd carried her out of the ward, Vance let himself close his eyes, knowing the fight was over. She was alive. She was his. And the world outside, for all its sterile cruelty, could not change what they had chosen inside this room. The story ended not with silence, but with the sound of Naraya's steady breathing, proof that hope had become fact.